electoral bonds that have come out, and we've got journalists looking through it all through of last night and this morning. To give you just the basic, of course, the Supreme Court decided that electoral bonds are fundamentally unconstitutional, that citizens are entitled to the information of who's giving money to our political parties, and if there is a quid pro quo of whether or not the political parties are returning those favors. Now, SBI was wrapped on the knuckles to actually submit that data on time. The EC has uploaded it on its website in the most unusable fashion. It's not data that can be searched through, it has to be scrolled through. Also, the link between, so they've told us who's donated what and at what, on what date, but they haven't said to which party. So really, that string not being drawn makes it really difficult to draw any conclusions from, from those numbers. The Supreme Court this morning instructing SBI to provide that link as well. So that's another then set of data that we're going to wait for. But in the meantime, obviously, as expected, the BJP we see has received 47% of the money that's come in. Top political donors, Future, Mega, Quick Supply, which we understand now may have a link to Reliance Industries, Vedanta, Bharti Group, SL. Large infrastructure companies that would have needed clearances from the government. And there seems to be a link also to a large number of raids. We're going to take that piece by piece. I'm sitting down with the team at Quint that's been doing a lot of the work behind this. Aditya Menon, who is the editor of politics at Quint, joins us along with Himanshi Dahiya, who is a principal correspondent, and Ishwar Gole, who is the associate editor. All of them have been working on this data. Thanks for joining us. Aditya, lots of interesting sort of developments coming in, but I'm going to ask you the first and the most obvious question. People expected the Adani Industries name to be right up front, but it's nowhere to be found. Have any links been found to it? What's going on?
No, there is absolutely no direct link to any Adani company in the among the electoral bond buyers. Even for Ambani, there is Quicks, which is the only major Ambani entity whose name is there. Tata's again conspicuous by their absence in the entire list. So yeah, some of the big guns of Indian industry are not there in the electoral bonds list.
So, and when you look at these numbers right now, I mean, it's interesting. We're all talking about future gaming and the lottery king. Someone we've not ever spoken about. Is that a surprising name to see right up front? 1,368 crore rupees.
Yeah, absolutely. One would have never thought that a lottery king would be the number one. Martin Santiago, many people hadn't even heard of him. Ishwar, who's here, he has done an entire profile of Martin Santiago and his entire story. Hardly anyone expected them or Megha, for that matter, to be the top 2-3 names in the list of buyers.
Is it fair, Aditya, at this point to say that there are some links with the companies that have donated and the raids and the investigations that they have been subject to by central investigative agencies?
So there is a correlation, and Himanshi here, she's done that data crunching for us. I think she would be the best person to answer this. I'll just hand it over to her here.
Yes, Himanshi, go ahead.
Yes, I mean, absolutely, there's a correlation there. I mean, since the data came last night, itself, so we've not had a lot of time to look at all the companies. But even if we just look at the top 30 donors, there are at least 14 names which have, the companies which have been raided either before they donated or right after they donated. So both ways, I mean, you can draw a correlation depending on if it's a central agency that's raiding them or if it's a state agency that's raiding them. So it could either be a pressure tactic to get them to donate, or it could be a pressure tactic to get them to donate to a different party. It could go along both ways. So if we look at, there's Future Gaming and Hotels raided multiple times, Mega Engineering raided multiple times, Haldia Energy raided. Again, there's this really curious case of Yashoda Super Speciality Hospital. So the company was raided in December 2020, and then in October 2021, it goes on and donates rupees 162 crore in electoral bonds. So this is like within months of a raid, you're donating, and 162 crore isn't a small amount of money. So there is, of course, a correlation, and just plain simple data out there can tell us that.
Actually, I do want to ask you this, Himanshi. How difficult was it to work through this data? Because it was a dump, really. It was not data that was easy to use.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think SBI or the EC or anybody out there wanted to make it easy for journalists. So it was one challenging, but again, it was frustrating at times because, like you said right at the start of this live session, that the data sheets weren't. It's not like you could search things or you could add. You can't work on the data sheets. It was just literally just a list that was handed over to you. Again, there are two different sets of data, so you also have to you can't even match, and which is also something that there is another petition that's been filed in the Supreme Court today as to why the SBI did not give you the numbers to match the two sets of data. So the task for journalists is really cut out, I think, for the next few weeks. I won't even say days, because this is the kind of data dump that takes you days to analyze and really come up with those small little trends there. So very, very,
Because
very.
you know what, Himanshi and Aditya, so what everybody has done so far is that they have made a list of the 10 top donors, because there are hundreds and hundreds of names on these lists, right? It runs into 30 or 40 pages. Now, with those top donors, if there are companies that we don't recognize, and I'll ask my colleague Shubhankar to sort of share that list if we can on the screen as well. If there are companies we don't recognize, I know there are some journalists who've gone into the back end to find out who owns these companies. So there's one that, we understand Reliance Industries may have smaller shell companies that are actually fronts for someone. And it's going to take us days or weeks to be able to find that out, correct, Aditya?
So, I mean, the Megha is of course a name that everyone was talking about, and there was a figure of 960 crore that Megha Infrastructure has given has purchased in terms of electoral bonds. But when we did a deeper dive into who's behind Megha and what are the other companies they own, we found it's as much as 260 crore more that companies allied with Mega have purchased in terms of electoral bonds. So the total number of Mega and allied companies turned out to be something in excess of 1,200 crore, making them clearly a number two after future gaming. So a lot of these companies are giving 10 crores, 20 crores, 50 crores through smaller entities that are allied with them, or through shell companies. So one director would be common between the big company and the small company, and that's how this sort of string of shell companies is created.
Mhm. Ishwar, we've got people writing to us right now saying, how does one become a lottery king? I think you're the guy to answer that question.
Well, talking about the Lottery King, taking from the discussion that has taken place so far as to how to find the correlation. Is there a correlation between, central agencies probing someone and them donating? What is interesting about the Lottery King, which is Mr. Santiago Martin, is that he had been facing cases of lottery frauds since dating back as far as 2007, when the CBI was investigating him. The ED came in later. Even before 2019, when the ED took over, his assets worth rupees over 200 crores had already been uh, frozen by the central agencies. What's interesting to note is that every year there have been at least 200 to 400 crores of his that have been seized by the enforcement directorate. But at the same time, he has donated between 200 and 400 crores each of those years. So that's a very interesting thing. And at the same time, the center had alerted, I think lottery is legal only in 8 to 9 states. When the scam was unearthed, the center had written to these states where lotteries are legal as to be careful of this person and do not do any business with him. He is accused of laundering money via these lottery schemes uh, in Sikkim to the tune of 910 crore. In fact, just last week, the premises associated with Future Gaming and his son-in-law, Adav Arjuna, who's also a VCK leader now, 10 of their properties were raided in Coimbatore just on the 9th of March, a week before the data came out. So, how does one become a lottery king? I think Mr. Santiago Martin is the best person to answer that question. But yes, there was clearly a lot of money involved when it came to being termed as a lottery king.
So let me see if I got the story right. Santiago Martin actually moved from India to Myanmar as a laborer, then basically became more and more powerful as the lottery king. Then moved back to South India, where a lot of our viewers might not know there are many states where you actually have paper lottery being sold on the road, and you buy a lottery, and then you may or may not win anything. The numbers come up in the paper the next day. But it's really Sikkim and the Northeast where he actually made a lot of money. But what I found interesting in his story is that it's difficult to tell which political party has been raiding him, or where that. And like I said, SBI has not made it easy for us to draw those conclusions. But even from his story, he seems to be close to a whole bunch of parties.
Absolutely. He was considered close to the DMK at one point. Under the Jayalalitha regime, he was also arrested and was in prison for 8 months in an alleged land grab case. Uh, there are unconfirmed reports that his son was a part of the BJP at some point, but neither the Tamil Nadu BJP or anybody from the party has confirmed it. This was a picture that had surfaced yesterday after the data came out that he was a part of the BJP in 2015, but nobody has been able to confirm that so far. In fact, his son also has a picture with the finance minister from last year where he is seen in a conversation with Mrs. Sitaraman about the lottery business in India. At least that's what the picture on Instagram and his caption says. In fact, at a point, he produced a film worth rupees 20 crores based on a script written by Mr. Karunanidhi. So there is no way to establish which party he was closer to. At one point, he also came as an embarrassment to Mr. Pinarayi Vijayan in Kerala, while Mr. Vijayan was in conflict with Mr. Achutanandan, and the differences between them, where he gave a donation of 2 crore rupees to the CPIM, and it left the government Mr. Vijayan red-faced to an extent where he said, "We don't want anything to do with you. Take your 2 crore rupees back," and that money was returned to him. So I think he has tried his best to be in everybody's good books.
So let me ask Aditya this question. If we talk about, for example, the Navayuga Engineering Company, right, which was responsible for the Silkyara tunnel that collapsed, trapping those workers in there for 16 days. And it was a story that sort of captured the imagination of the entire country. Everybody was worried about, are they able to eat? Are we giving them water? How are we going to get them out? Post that, there was no talk about what happened to this company or if they were held responsible at all. And then a few months later, we read that, okay, they've started work again. They're just going to continue as is, as if nothing had happened. 55 crore rupees in electoral bonds. Aditya, before, after, how do we understand this? Again, I know it's difficult to draw these conclusions at this point, but these 55 crore rupees came in before the tunnel collapse. But are we to understand that projects are being, sort of awarded after donations? Is there a quid pro quo? Are you seeing enough of a pattern there?
So there are many cases in which we see companies have given have taken electoral bonds. They have been encashed, which they have to be encashed within 15 days, and in a month or maybe 2 months they get a project by the government. This happens most frequently in the construction industry. I think any people who are involved in heavy infrastructure projects, though we are seeing that pattern a lot in those kind of companies. So in the case of Navayuga, that has happened. They got a very big project and they had been donating to which party we don't know, but it was 55 crores and no action was taken against them after the tunnel collapse. So such things really raise a lot of questions on the links between these companies and political parties. Similar case is that of Megha, which
Yes.
again got several big contracts from the central government, from the Telangana government. We have a video of Mr. Gadkari praising Megha. I mean, the Telangana government was accused by Y.S. Sharmila of sort of being hand in glove with this company. That time, of course, the TRS was in power. Now BRS.
So, if I'm
So
not mistaken, sorry for interrupting you, Mega that you're talking about is an infrastructure company for our audience's benefit that has totally, via its own organization and two, three linked organizations, given 1,200 crore rupees in electoral bonds. Now, we don't know the recipient because we don't have that information, but that is a shocking amount of money to donate to a political party. Now, they have received contracts from government worth more than 14,000 crore rupees in return. The in return part is conjecture for our audience, but they have received contracts worth more than 14,000 crore rupees. Correct, Aditya?
yeah, for instance, their biggest project is the Kaleshwaram irrigation project, in which water from the Godavari River is supposed to be diverted to the arid regions in Telangana. So PP Reddy, who is the promoter of Megha, he said that we are practically moving an entire river, and there was a CAG audit that took place, which accused large scale corruption in that project. And again, the opposition, that time it was the Congress, the BJP, as well as YS Sharmila, they did say that this entire project is a cesspool of corruption. So a lot of questions actually being raised from not just the center but also the erstwhile BRS government in Telangana.
Himanshi, what do we know about Serum Institute? Did they put in money to electoral bonds during COVID or not?
No, they did not directly donate through electoral bonds, but they went through the prudent chest, if I'm not wrong, which is a different form of, which is a different channel for donation. So in that sense, I mean, I haven't really followed their case, but yeah, their money did not directly come through electoral bonds. So yeah, I mean, there are different ways to draw that connection.
All right, let's talk about TMC. Now, this I found surprising that obviously the BJP, this we expected, would receive the lion's share of the donation. So on one sheet, we've got everybody who's donated and how much they've donated. On the other sheet, we've got all the political parties and how much they've withdrawn. We don't know the connection between the two sheets, but BJP has withdrawn the most, they've received the most. The next in line is TMC, which has got about 12% of the total donations, which I found interesting and maybe a little bit surprising. Any one of you want to comment on, there is, of course, the timing of the Bengal election. Ishwar, did you look at those numbers of TMC?
TMC, as you said, yes, it surprisingly came out to be the second largest party to have received donations via electoral bonds. But I mean, as far as we know about the TMC and Mrs. Mamata Banerjee, we also know for a fact that she, unlike the Congress, she has not really had a lot of sour relations with lots of the top business tycoons. Like Mr. Adani also is known to have certain investments in the state of West Bengal. So that might be one of the reasons that it was the second largest party. But I think Aditya will be a better person to talk about the politics behind and the business relations of the TMC.
Actually, the electoral bonds as a concept is very convenient for what is known as the Calcutta School of Chartered Accountants. So this entire model of creating shell companies and shell companies which are linked to other shell companies, which are linked to other shell companies, this is a modus operandi of Calcutta Chartered Accountants. So it's
Hmm.
not surprising that a very large proportion of the electoral bonds are coming from Calcutta-based companies. Now we don't know who that's going to. Is it going to the
Yeah.
BJP or is it going to the TMC? Uh, we can safely, I mean, the left obviously is not taking electoral bonds. I don't think the Congress is a player here. Uh, so it's not clear. And this entire culture of raids being conducted and donations being given seems to be being carried out in West Bengal to the most extent. Now, central agencies are very aggressively conducting raids in Bengal on finances of the TMC. The state government also is using its agencies to target certain companies, and there's a tussle between the two. So Jagdeep Dhankar, who when he was the governor of West Bengal, he had sort of raised the issue of an IFB plant, a liquor plant in West Bengal, I think it was in a place called Nurpur, and that plant was apparently attacked by TMC cadres. So Dhankar said that the atmosphere of insecurity is being created for industry. Now IFB turns out to be one of the biggest donors in electoral bonds. So I think this entire culture of waste and donation is happening a lot in West Bengal.
So, I mean, interesting sort of data that is coming in, but is there enough here, Aditya, whoever wants to answer this question, to draw conclusions of quid pro quo, that basically they were companies making donations and then in return they have received large contracts, which means large contracts or infrastructure contracts from government are paid for by taxpayer money. There's a portion of that money that gets used then again to pay more electoral bonds. They get more money from the taxpayer. Is there enough in this data to draw that conclusion?
I don't think there is enough because we don't know who got the money. Once we know that, I think we will safely be able to say this company gave money to this party and a government run by this party awarded this contract to the same company. I think we will be able to make that connection as soon as we get that data.
Anything you've noticed that hasn't been picked up yet for all three of you, Aditya?
Manshi, would you like to take that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of there's a lot of data crunching that still has to be done, because it's just the document itself is so it's so long. So for instance, you will have to go into the shell companies or the fronts which several companies were using, and to just go micro and find who actually is behind those companies. I think it's a task, like I said, which is going to take weeks for journalists to do, because the work's really not been made easy for us here. So yeah, a lot of trends which are yet to be picked in, but I think the biggest or the biggest thing that we'll have to watch out for in the coming days will be to see if the opposition actually is able to mobilize people over this issue, because I mean, we're literally on the heels of a general election here. So that is something that the political aspect of it, because we're also busy with numbers right now, I think in the coming days people will also start looking at how the whole issue is going to shape politically for us.
Actually, so the other question, and I will ask that political question, so I'm giving Aditya time to gather his thoughts on that. But my other question is, if there is any sort of room here for investigation, let's assume that SBI puts out the data that links where the money has come from, who it has gone to, and we are as journalists able to, on the back end, now match it with contracts that the government has handed out. Is this enough evidence for investigation of quid pro quo, saying that there is a link here and it should be investigated?
I think absolutely. I mean, for instance, let's say that tomorrow once the link is established, and then let's just think of a mining bid that happened. And if we know that there is a certain company which donated a certain amount of money in electoral bonds to, say, a particular state government where, a mining project was up for grabs. And then in the following months, what we see is that there were 3 companies which were bidding for that project. And all 3 companies were the shell company, or all 3 companies were in some ways or the other related. Or there are cases where, there are 3 bidders involved in a deal and 2 just don't put up a fight. So in that sense, I mean, once we know who's donated to whom, I think it will be absolutely clear, and there'll be enough for a proper investigation. And I think then that will be enough evidence.
Interestingly, news that's coming in right now, BRS leader Kavita's house is being raided in the Delhi liquor scam. So there's more of that going on as well. But is it true that there's about 600 crore rupees that's not tallying between the 2 lists? Is that something that your team has discovered as well?
Yeah, there is some discrepancy.
Yeah. I'm guessing I'm guessing it's the discrepancies because of the 15-day period. Like, that is what experts were saying, that because you have 15 days, and after a particular date, people, when a complete blank was put to a complete ban was put on electoral bonds. So the bonds purchased till those dates, maybe some of them haven't gotten redeemed in the coming 15 days in February.
There was also a question. Sorry for interrupting. There's a question on Twitter that data before 2019 has not been uploaded, but my understanding was that the Supreme Court asked for 2019 onwards.
Yeah, yeah. The Supreme Court asked from April 2019 onwards, yes.
So that's then not a problem if the SBI has not put out the data from before that.
No, that's not a problem.
But
So,
ideally,
yes,
ideally,
Aditya.
ideally, activists should approach the Supreme Court for the previous data also to be brought out, because there is no reason why that data should not be made public. It's about 2,500 crores worth of electoral bonds from what I was reading in one report. So, I mean, that data also needs to be made public.
So here's the question now. We are on the eve, we're on the cusp of the election. We understand that this announcement could happen any day now, and we'll go into full election mode. The government is already in full campaign mode. The opposition, we're not really sure how much of a campaign mode they're in, but do you think this will make any difference on the ground, Aditya? Is it likely to move the needle?
I think it entirely depends on the opposition. At least on social media, I thought between yesterday and today the opposition had really come together. We were seeing Congress and Aam Aadmi Party, left, DMK supporters, everyone sort of completely attacking the BJP on social media. So at least on social media, the opposition has gotten its game right. But it's the offline world that probably counts more. And but judging by the number of WhatsApp forwards people are receiving, either making fun of the government or giving data from the electoral bonds, it does seem that this issue is going to continue for some time. How electorally potent it would be, we can't say.
So, for example, Ravi Shankar on our timeline right now on this chat, he says, why should there be any investigation? You people are so biased. You don't consider the fact that donations have been there since independence. They've always been political donations. So, what's your problem? Aditya, what's your problem?
If a if a party which gets a donation from a particular company and the company then gets a contract, that has to be investigated. Some of these donations are made by companies which are registering a loss every year, which are declaring a loss in their balance sheet. So how are they making the donations worth 100 crores per year if they don't even have those kind? They're not declaring those kind of assets. So where are they getting that money? So clearly they're donating in anticipation that this donation will get us some benefits. So definitely it's worth an investigation.
In fact, I just want to point out to our audience that before the electoral bond scheme was introduced, there was a limit to which a corporate could donate. You could only donate, if I'm not mistaken, about 7.5% of your net profit of the last couple of years. If I've got some of that technicality wrong, but now there's no cap. So we have companies that are declaring losses, but are donating multiples of what they should have been making. Is that correct? Either Ishwar or
Yes, yeah,
Himanshu?
that's absolutely correct. Yes, because when I was speaking to Mr. S.Y. Qureshi, he had pointed out exactly these technicalities as to how this cap was not raised from 7% to 15% or 20% or 25%. The cap was entirely waived. So eventually, even the companies that are in losses, they had no caps or they had no reliance to show that they are in losses and they in fact cannot donate. He had also listed out a number of amendments that had to be made for electoral bonds to be made legal in the first place. So, I mean, of course, there was scope for quid pro quo, but at the same time, we also need to remember that a lot of regional parties also received where there are regional parties ruling in the state. So, if that alphanumeric data indeed comes out, it will not just BJP, there would be some cans opened for regional parties and opposition governments as well.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask for concluding notes at this point, because I know that if I push the conversation any further, we'll all be speculating, which is something none of us like to do as journalists. So we really have to wait for more data to be able to talk some more. But a closing note, Aditya, and we've been talking about elections a lot. The Prime Minister is a formidable election force. Can he overcome this?
I think there is still a lot going for the Prime Minister. There are a number of narratives that the BJP has created, both ideological as well as in terms of governance, which are still working for the party. Uh, but this definitely gives the opposition an opportunity to sort of put the BJP on the back foot for the probably for the first time in weeks. So yeah, I think that limited advantage the opposition will get because of this.
All right. We're going to leave it there. I want to thank all three of you for making time on what is obviously a very stressful, very busy day. We've all been up since very early this morning, and I do hope that when we get our second tranche of data, we can have another conversation. For our audience, we're going to keep trying to break this down, but we don't want to stray into the area of speculation. So we're going to stop here. We're going to come back when we have more data. Do stay with us. Remember, all of these stories that we discussed are on the Quint website. So take a look at the website of the Quint and read out the work that they have been doing. For more news and updates, you can download the Beetroot News app, and remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.